can't fucking stand this shit. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'll get this shit out of here. Look, I'm fucking sick of this shit. If you go on the goddamn social media website... No, I don't want to lose the Pop-Tart. Okay, I'm fucking tired of this. You go on the goddamn Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, go on all that shit. All the fucking comedians on there, the 10-second shit. It's not fucking funny. There's no jokes, no punchline, no nothing. It's just a bunch of relatable shit. It's like, oh, haha, this meme's so relatable, so fucking relatable. You want relatable? You want relatable? Okay, I can give you some fucking relatable. You want to hear something so fucking relatable that you qualify for child support? Well, here's some fucking relatable shit for you.
I think that was good.
That moved. Fuck you! I mean, bless you. But by the way, I saw that meme you shared. That meme. That fucking meme. Shit. Memes. Oh my god. Memes. You know what's not funny about memes? When they're not funny. When they're just relatable. I spit on you? I'm sorry. You know what's not funny? Relatability. I didn't even knock over the box this time, but fuck it. Relatability is the key to being popular on the internet. You want to be an internet comedian? You gotta be relatable. You can't have the best punchlines. You gotta be some schlub, but also not a schlub because you gotta be pretty. You gotta be cool. You gotta be Markiplier. But fine, you want relatable? I'll give you relatable. I'm too fat to be moving around like this. Bri, I want to talk to you. Your performance in the meeting this morning was subpar. But you know what else is subpar? Les memes. Because you know what sucks about memes?
What's that?
I love your enthusiasm. Memes. The most fucking obnoxious thing about all internet culture is memes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obnoxious. It's memes.
Well, that intro was a bit of a fucking mess, wasn't it? I don't know what I'm planning on doing with that whole thing, so I hope you enjoyed it, whatever it was. But my point is that relatability has kind of replaced downright humor. It's easy to look at something and say, oh yeah, that's true, and then move along because you're just scrolling through your timelines as opposed to actually sitting there through the complex progression of a joke or a story. It's much easier and kind of cheaper to just say a thing that's mildly amusing, but overall is just sort of like, oh, I know that guy, that's totally me, or I have a friend who's, oh, that's the thing. And I don't think that that's terrible, but I don't think it's the most hilarious shit I've ever seen either. But on the subject of relatability, I do have a bit of a story I wanted to share with you today, and something that I think we can all, the AC happened to kick on right as I was finishing up that last sentence. Thank God. I have a bit of a story that I think can kind of be related to that happened to me only like a day or two ago, and I think is something that a lot of people, including me, I learned from it. So I'd like to share that story and lesson along with you today, because we all like learning, don't we? Yeah! The story itself isn't all that remarkable, to be honest with you. I have a bit of a tendency every once in a while, usually in the wee hours of the morning, to go onto Facebook or something to look at some of the profiles of people who have since come and gone from my life. Not like dead people, but people who either I was friends with before or maybe not. I go on and kind of see how they're doing for what I can see from an unfriended perspective. It's not full-on like Facebook stalking, because sometimes that can kind of get out of hand, but it's just looking and seeing like, oh, how are they doing? Do they look happy? Most of them have kids. Like, it's the weirdest shit. Like, how many of your old fucking friends from high school or whatever just have babies now? I think the record, as I look back, and there was like 4. One of my old classmates from high school has 4 fucking kids now. I'm 24. For fuck's sake, like, I get it. Some people just want big families, but this doesn't look intentional, if you catch my drift. But one of the people that I happen to think to look into was someone that I have a bit more of a personal history with, someone who, for the sake of privacy in this video, I'll call Andy. Let's go with that, Andy. She is someone who I was friends with back in the day, and I'll kind of get into more of our interactions in a little bit, but to explain what happened, we did not part great friends. We had been friends, and we were not anymore, but I feel like times had changed, and I had progressed as a person, and I looked at their Facebook, and I noticed some cool things right away that had nothing to do with any previous interactions. You know, they work for a dog, a pet care company that I had already been a previous customer for. They are big into cosplay, and I'm a big fan of that as well. And some of their cosplay happened to be from one of my favorite shows, my all-time favorite show, My Hero Academia. So I felt like there was a lot of stuff that had nothing to do with anything that we could have talked about before. So I'm thinking in my head, this is the perfect time to try to reintroduce myself and say, hey, maybe we can be friends apart from anything that happened before. So I sent the friend request, and not 30 minutes later did I did the Obama thing. Now 30 minutes later, I didn't get the notification. I just checked and found that not only had my friend request been declined, but I no longer had the ability to send another one. I don't know if on Facebook that's a standard thing if someone declines your friend request, but I got a familiar feeling at that moment, a feeling that I hadn't felt in this particular instance for a while, but I knew all too well. The feeling of rejection. It's a very familiar feeling because, Jesus, it's not even funny how many times over the years that I have been rejected by this girl in one way or another. And it was kind of upsetting at the moment to think about why I felt that way, because it's not fun. It's not fun to be told, no, I don't want to talk to you, especially when it's not told with words. She didn't send me a message. She didn't have to. Just, no thank you, just decline of the friend request. And immediately, like I said, I felt rejected, and I started to think about, why do I feel rejected? Because she wasn't rejecting me. It sounds weird to say, but no, she wasn't. She was rejecting the person she last talked to, which is a person that I am no longer. But she has no reason to know that. She has no reason to believe that I've changed that much. The last time I saw her, things were different. Things were different. For a little context, and the whole reason this whole video is titled the way it is I used to not have the healthiest of relationships with Andy. When I went from my first high school, I transferred halfway through to another school. When I went from one to the other, I didn't know anyone in the new area, and I met Andy about halfway through my first year. She was dating a friend of mine at the time, who is now also an ex-friend of mine, and they were together for a long time until eventually they split. And at this point, for some particular reason, she paid more attention to me at that point. I had always gotten the feeling that she didn't have a lot of good friends around her. She seemed to always have problems with, other friends being around her that weren't either close or had their priorities in a different way or weren't treating her quite well. And so it really seemed like she needed a good friend at that point. But the problem was, that's what she needed, but it's not what she got from me. I can explain it away as much as I want, saying it was high school, but there's no way of getting around it. I was a fucking dick. I was an absolute dick, and there's no better word to describe it than dick, because that's all that was thinking at that time. And yeah, I was just way more focused in trying to I had a crush on her. I had the hots for her. I was very much into her. That did not go into when she was dating my friend, but after that, when she started paying more attention to me, I think I was talking with Bri about this earlier. There's a lot of societal pressure and a lot of, not really pressure, there's a lot of societal influence telling men, and it's not this, men aren't the only people that have this problem, but specifically men have this thing where you're not supposed to have emotionally connected relationships with anyone. You're not supposed to be able to confide or be close to anyone emotionally unless you're dating them or fucking them or something like that. And so it's almost subconsciously seen as a one-to-one. If someone pays attention to you a lot, obviously they're trying to get on your dick. And so when you go in that direction, I'm not trying to explain it away either. Again, remember, I said I was a dick. I'm not fucking excusing anyone. It's certainly not blaming her for that. That is just kind of a thing that happens, and it's stupid. It's fucking stupid. I hate it. But that is essentially what happened. I subconsciously felt, well, she's paying attention to me. Well, she was, oh God, I was unhealthily attracted to her, to put it mildly. I didn't do anything creepy or weird, but I was in other relationships at the time, and I remember vividly thinking, if at any point Andy had decided to give me a shot, that I would go with her immediately, break it off with the other person, and just like, nah. That's how fucking ridiculous this whole situation was. It's fucking terrible. I absolutely despise the kind of person I was back then, but you know, I can't deny that was who I was at the time, and you know, I can only say sorry so many times before it just sounds like all it was back then, which was just words. And even though I mean it, I can't blame anyone who knew me back then for thinking that I would still be that person today, because it's a true thing that everything in life changes, but you know, some people do it a lot slower than others. And sometimes I think that I focus so much on the fact that I personally have changed because I'm trying to deflect the fact that I'm so scared about everything around me changing, that I'm trying to focus on my internal change when maybe I haven't really changed that much. I don't know, but I know damn well that I don't have that mindset that I did back then, so I know at least that has changed. But yeah, over the years, she really treated me like a friend, and she knew I was attracted to her too. She knew I wanted to get with her because I blatantly fucking said it. I asked her out, I don't know how many times, and every time she turned me down. But she didn't always, it was never really definitive. I remember it being that way, even though it probably wasn't that way, because, I mean, the kind of mindset that would lead you to think, oh, if you just wait around long enough and be your friend, you'll maybe get out of the friend zone. I can imagine that would play a memory mind trick on any recollection of how things happened, as being, oh, she never blatantly said no, so there's still a chance. I would be willing to fucking bet that she made it abundantly clear, and I just never accepted it that way because I didn't want it to be that way. Which sucks. It's fucking dumb, and I hate that was the way it was. But yeah, for years, she fended off me being a terrible fake friend because, and I won't speak for her reasons for it. She has no reason to need to explain herself. She doesn't owe me shit. She didn't then, she doesn't now. And no one in this situation owes anyone anything, because here's the main reason why the friend zone is a fucking lie. It's the whole reason why I'm telling this story, is that essentially what is happening when anyone feels friend zoned is that they have figured out that there is a difference in the level of expectation between them and another person in whatever relationship they have. Because even being acquaintances is a level of relationship. So that it's not just romantic being relationships. So if one person feels, I want to be romantic and attached and maybe sexual with number two, but number two just wants friendship, I put it down, but friendships can be more valuable than romantic relationships. I'm just showing that they're not at the same expectation. The thing about that is that this is a problem if you don't reconcile it. If one person can't accept that the other person doesn't want to do what they want to do, you have options. Healthy options, I'll go with those first, is to either reconcile and say, well, maybe I won't get what I want, but what they're offering could also be good. Maybe I'll give that a shot. Or if you can't do that, you need to get away from that person. You need to be honest with them and say, I can't be your friend because I just keep thinking about this other thing that I want. And that's being honest. What you don't do, and this is where the whole friend zone thing happens, what you don't do is blame the other person, because it's not their fucking fault. All right? In this situation with me and Andy, in that moment, I tried my best not to feel like I was being friend zoned, but I couldn't escape that trap. I was an immature fucking high school piece of shit boy like a lot of others are. Not all. There's no such thing as all. But there are a lot of guys who act like this. And I didn't feel entitled to a relationship. I just knew I really wanted it, and I wouldn't accept no as an answer. Or at least not as a way to stop trying, which is... No, you don't do that. I did my best not to blame her, but I do remember there being residual feelings about her occasionally complaining that she was single, or complaining that she hadn't been with someone or whatever, and me being like, well, I'm right here. Like, that doesn't mean shit. If they don't want to be with you, they can still want to be with someone, but that doesn't mean that they'll take anyone. That's, again, there's a lot of logical fallacies in all of this. But that's because it's an irrational thing. But as much as I don't want there to have been, there was a part of me that did kind of blame her for this, which is ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. Where I was like, well, I'm here and a lot of your other friends are treating you terribly, and you say that you like me, and that... I remember once we even had a conversation where I told her that I loved her, and she said she loved me, but not in the same way that I loved her. And I was like, if you love me and all these other people are treating you like shit, then why are you pushing me away? Which is so not how it works. It's one of the most inverted ways to think that there has ever been, and that's just what happens when you're not thinking properly. You're not thinking with your head, you're thinking with something else. So over the years, I remember multiple times where she went out of her way to try to be friends with me, where she would sit with me in class, she would confide with me, she'd hang out with me. She kept giving me chances, and Lord knows I can't speak as to why. Again, maybe it was other people treating her terribly, or maybe she really just felt like I would eventually change, but in those times I just didn't. And so eventually we got to the point where I had to be honest. I was like, I can't be just friends. And so she said, well, I don't want to be anything but. And so it really, that was at the moment where I had to accept that it was me putting it on her. It was my fault that this wasn't working, because her friendship, if I had been mature enough, if I had been accepting enough, if I had been just not a dick enough, we could have had a good friendship. Because like I said earlier, some friendships can be way more valuable than romantic relationships. Just because you're not putting your dick in something doesn't mean you can't be really close to them. But at least in that moment, there was just a part of me that wouldn't accept that, because I wanted something and she wanted something else. But there were still moments where I felt like I had changed, and we would maybe add each other back on Facebook and talk, and then all that would come flooding back to me because nothing had changed. I didn't feel I didn't have anything new I felt like I could talk to her about. I didn't have any new experiences to really share with her or to talk about with her. I didn't have anything that I felt we could bond over other than old times, and old times weren't that good. Usually they're not. The only time that you feel like old times are so good is usually when you're just not satisfied with where you are now. It has nothing to do with how good the old times really were. Again, I want to specify that this whole problem was my fault. And so when years later she's well and truly moved on, we live on opposite sides of the country now, and she's engaged, I'm engaged, we're all completely moved on, and I just randomly pop up. Why in the world would she think that this is going to be different? Because as much as you feel like things change over time, and things do change, nobody else knows that, and it's not up to them to realize what has changed, or even to decide if they have. The consequences of what has been, who you were, might not be comfortable to have to deal with now that you feel like things are different or things have changed or anything like that, but that doesn't mean you don't get to face them. I very much hate a lot of the things I did back in the day. I really can't believe I used to be as terrible of a person and a friend, and just in general I was to a lot of people. But just because I don't feel like I'm that way now, that doesn't mean that I get a free pass back into these people's lives. I just don't. And so because of that, a person I am now has to face the consequence that there are certain bridges that I have burned and will never be able to travel across again, even if I feel like I can. Even if I can fix them, I can't just go around fixing bridges, and if the person who is on the other side doesn't want there to be one. And that's on me. The overall lesson here is not that I'm a dick and that's the story. The overall lesson is to hopefully show that there is more than in this moment that which what you do will affect how things go. I was not thinking properly. I was not treating her with respect and as a friend, and for that I apologize. But she didn't owe me anything then. She doesn't owe me anything now. I'm not doing this to try to, maybe she'll see it and she'll realize I've changed. I highly doubt she ever would check my channel. I would be willing to bet that she doesn't. And that's good. If she feels that I was a negative part of her life to any degree, then I don't want her to wallow in the negative. I am glad that she's doing well, or at least she seems to be, and I wish her all the success that I should have worked towards helping her achieve back in the day when she needed that friend. I just wasn't. But the overall thing that I learned from this whole experience is not only because I already knew the friend zone was bullshit. If you have a different expectation for a relationship than someone else, that's not it. The only time it becomes a problem is if you try to force it to be the way you want it to be when the other person doesn't want it to be that way. And at that point, it's on you. It's on you for trying to force something to be the way that you want it to be as opposed to the way it's going to be. The world doesn't bend to your will. You can do your best to try to influence it, but at the end of the day, if you try to force someone to do something that they don't want to do, doesn't matter what that thing is, it's not okay. I've been going through and talking to a lot of people that I've known for a long time about how I feel I've changed as a person and all this other stuff. And I genuinely do feel like I have changed for the better in a lot of ways. But I'm not perfect. I'm not doing great right now. I've got a lot of stuff I still need to work on. But I hadn't been denied the opportunity to explain and apologize until now externally. There have been some bridges I refused to go anywhere near because I knew that it just wouldn't work. But this was probably the first time where I've tried to reach out, at least that I can think of, and I had to face the fact that I had done too much damage. And I can't speak as to why she declined my friend request either. Because again, she didn't know me shit. And I can't speak to why she did any of the things she did. All I can do is explain why I did what I did. And unfortunately, the only good explanation I have for any of the things I did back in the day was I was a fucking terrible fake friend. And she was just someone who needed a friend. I can suppose, but that's about it. As for right now, I know that I was trying to genuinely mend that bridge. I don't have any want or desire to change, to go back to the way things were, because it was terrible. But I know that. But yeah, the thing I had to learn from all this is that just because you feel that things have changed for the better doesn't mean that excuses anything that happened before. And that's something that sucks. It sucks. And I'm just being blatantly honest. It fucking sucks. Because it honestly, if you feel like you've grown so far away from who you used to be that that's almost a separate person entirely, it feels like you're being blamed for something that someone else did, and in a sense you are, but ultimately you're not, because no matter how much you think you changed, you're still you. And just because you feel like you didn't make someone feel a certain way doesn't mean you didn't. So yeah, the friend zone is a lie, and consequences for your actions don't go away just because time happens. It's just not a thing. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. I don't really know why the opening and the end result of this video is so tonally different. I don't know what the fuck. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that because I feel like it's hashtag relatable. But more importantly, I feel like it's an important lesson to learn. Is just because you feel something, or because you were trying something, or because of anything, nobody owes you shit. Nobody owes you a goddamn thing. If they don't want you, they don't have to have you. And that's it. They don't even have to explain why. It's just how it goes sometimes. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. I've been rambling for long enough. Thank you all for watching, and today's bit of advice is make sure to look both ways before you cross your grandma. She will slap the shit out of you. Until next time, so long.